Hi, all you sake lovers out there. Today I'm starting a new series called Sake With, where I'll be trying sake with a variety of different foods. Today's topic is sake with sweets. This is kind of an advanced topic for pairing sake. I actually don't drink sake with sweets very often either, but I was inspired to try this because I went to a really great place in Tokyo called Wagashi Kumpu in the Sendagi neighborhood of Tokyo, and there they pair Japanese sweets with sake, and it really opened my mind to how you can pair sake with other kinds of sweets. And if you ever come to Tokyo, I really, really recommend that you go to, and you love sake, I really recommend that you go to Wagashi Kumpu because it's just an amazing place and the owner is amazing. She has just like an encyclopedic knowledge of the history of Japanese sweets, and you also get to try tasting it with a variety of sake, which I think is really interesting to people who don't necessarily get a chance to do that in other countries. Anyway, so I decided I wanted to take what I had experienced there and apply it to Western style sweets. And I'm lucky because there's this fantastic bakery, well, patisserie in my neighborhood called Shindo Yogashi. And the chef actually studied in France. So, I mean, just an amazing chance to pair sake with his creations, which are just some of the best cakes that I've ever had, honestly. So, let's get right into it. The first thing I have here is a Junmai Ginjo using Aiyama rice, which is really popular among sake enthusiasts in Japan, and well, everywhere actually, but I think it's more well known in Japan than it is overseas, that variety of rice. This is from the Kanchiku brand, and it's made by Totsuka Brewery in Saku in Nagano, and it's pretty sweet. Let's look at let's smell the aroma. So lots of apple, pear. I'm getting a little bit of spices like cardamom maybe underneath. Yeah, it's not really an overpowering fruitiness, but it's definitely fruity. Okay, on the palate, it's a little bit sweet, but it's got a little bite in the end, honestly. A little bit of acidity and even some bitterness, which I actually tend to like in sake because it kind of gives a refreshing, cleansing, sensation, like you would have in a wine with tannin or in a beer with hops or something like that. So let's try it with Shindo Yogashi's Shindo roll. So this is a roll cake with whipped cream and a variety of fruits inside, and this is like their signature sweet. So, whoa, just it's so fluffy. Here we go. Wow, everything just melts in your mouth. The cake also just totally delicate and melty in your mouth. does is this is a little bit of a sweet sake, but then compared to this, they're kind of not far apart in their level of sweetness, actually. But this becomes a little bit lighter and more refreshing. So what it's doing here is kind of cleansing my tongue of the whipped cream. So that, I think, is really a success. I'm going to have more of that in a minute. So now our second selection is a Yamahai sake, and it's called Tarumaru, and it's from Miyoshino Brewery in Nara. And Tarumaru means that it's a taruzake, which has been stored in cedar or cypress barrels. And this was common in the past because that's how sake was transported. So as a Yamahai, it's going to have a little bit of funkiness. That's what people say. And yes, I can smell that. It's kind of yeasty and bready and a little bit cheesy. Not like a stinky cheese, but kind of like cheddar cheese. And on the tongue, it's got that wonderful Yamahai complex acidity, and that's usually caused by lactic acid, which gives a little tang in the back of the tongue. And so that's going to pair well with things that have similar acidity and also a little bit of bitterness. So that's why I've chosen a dark chocolate gâteau chocolat. Where's my fork? And this is one of my favorite desserts. Just look at that. It's so thick and rich, and it's also got this wonderful little crust on the bottom, which, I don't know, just makes it for me. So rich, but at the same time not heavy. It's just melts on your tongue. And so let's see how it pairs with the sake. Wow. Wow, that totally transforms this sake. In fact, to me, it becomes a little citrusy. So the effect is kind of like you're eating kind of candied orange peel with the chocolate. That's really good, and it also serves to kind of cleanse the palate of the heavy chocolate. And I think that would work with a cheesecake as well, because the lactic acid in the sake and the cheesiness of the cheesecake would match with each other. Unfortunately, they didn't have cheesecake today. I would have liked to have tried that. Okay, so now let's look at our last selection. This is an aged sake from Tomita Brewery in Shiga, and the brand is Shichihon Yari, which I think some people might be familiar with because it is available overseas. But this particular product is an aged sake from 2015, so it's been aged for more than 7 years, and it's made with rice that was not grown with any agricultural chemicals. So let's see what that's like. It's a very subtle aroma, a little bit of spice and nuts and caramel, which also carries over to the palate. Quite light for an aged sake, and really spicy in the finish. Like it's got a lot of heat in the end, not just from the alcohol, but a lot of spiciness. And so that caramel flavor and the caramelization that actually happens in aged sake is something that I thought would pair with this caramel dessert, which has caramel mousse, chocolate mousse, and sponge cake, and then a crumble crust on the bottom. So the combination of textures here is just amazing. Got to get all of it together. So it's that rich caramel mousse, and then you've got the crumble crust giving crunchiness on the bottom. Wow, that's just amazing. So let's see how it goes with this. Yeah, that is so light that it's just so refreshing with that. I think the caramel flavors are blending, but you don't get a lot of flavor from this. Like I said, it's a very light aged sake, and I think the experience would be different if we were dealing with a heavier aged sake that was more like a whiskey. But I really enjoy this combination because I think something that I've discovered by pairing sake with Western sweets is that in comparison with Japanese sweets, which are made with beans and rice and have a kind of graininess or stickiness often, Western sweets have, are often made with cream and mousse and custard and cheese and chocolate. So they have a lot of a heavier just texture in general. And so what the sake is doing in that case is really acting as a palate cleanser. And I just think that makes for an amazing combination. So I hope this gives you some ideas of how you can pair sake with sweets. Just to recap, if you're eating something, or if you have a sweet that is creamy and fruity, then you probably want to go with something that has a fruity flavor profile. It doesn't have to necessarily be a ginjo or daiginjo, but on the sweeter side and with fruity aromas and flavors. If you're dealing with something that's heavy, like chocolate or cheesecake, and also has some acidity and bitterness, then you're going to want to combine that with something that also has a similar acidity. Especially the lactic acidity of Yamahai is going to pair really well with that. And finally, if you have things with nuts, caramel, and dried fruits, think about an aged sake, because especially the process that happens in aged sake is similar to the caramelization process. And so those flavors are going to blend together. So I hope this helped you think about how you can pair sake with sweets. And until my next video, keep exploring sake.